Welcome to Catholic Connection with Teresa Tomeo, keeping you connected to your faith and your world. Teresa tackles the issues of faith and culture, the pro-life message, and media awareness. And now, here's Teresa Tomeo.
On a Tuesday, last Tuesday in July for 2025, July 29th, great to be with you as we quickly are moving toward wrapping up the month. And, of course, August right around the corner. We'll talk more about August and Ferragosto and the Assumption and how it's celebrated in Italy. That will be tomorrow on, of course, Shrines and Wonders Wednesdays. But today, we are going to have some great information for you. We are actually going to be sitting down with a wonderful priest who is going to give us all kinds of great resources based on the teachings and the writings of the great Thomas Aquinas. So Father Ambrose Little is going to be with us in studio, Aquinas 101 and other online evangelization tools. He's the head of the Thomistic Institute, which is based in our nation's capital. And they have this great online effort called Aquinas 101, and we shall discuss. And then we have two segments. I'm so excited to always have Bill Donahue on with me from the Catholic League. If you heard the report that came out, I think it was last week or maybe the week before. There's so many stories that are running together. But there was a big report, of course, on our news outlets, Catholic News Agency, the Register had this, on this Catholic spy ring, the FBI Catholic spy ring. Remember when that first story broke? Oh, it was only one office in Virginia that had this memo about ultra-traditional Catholics. It was just one memo, one office. Yeah, I was born, but not last night or not yesterday. Turns out it was nationwide. Shocker, not. But Bill Donahue is diving into this, and the importance of this story is really to look at the fact that even though we still, at least on paper, have religious freedom, that the attacks against people of faith, especially the Catholic Church, has gotten very, very strong. And we have to be aware of this. If we're not aware, if we don't have our eyes and our ears open, we could be duped or lulled into thinking that everything's fine because we get to go to Mass on Sunday and receive the sacraments. Our freedom, our faith is, of course, obviously not just about, the Eucharist is the source and summit of our faith, of course. But we are called, what does the deacon or the priest say at the end of the Mass? He says, go into the world, glorifying God by your life. My husband says that after every Mass on Sunday, right? That means that we go into the world and witness. And yet, under the Biden administration, there were some pretty scary things going on in terms of faith and Catholics, especially those who enjoy going to the beautiful traditional Latin Mass. So we'll discuss with Bill Donahue what he discovered. Two segments with Bill in the first hour of the program. Let's take a look at the forecast. There's still a lot of heat going on around the country. Thunderstorms and heavy rains possible in the northern and central plains, and dangerous heat continues. National Weather Service is telling us this morning severe thunderstorms capable of producing damaging winds and isolated large hail and heavy rainfall are possible across the northern and central plains. And then there's all kinds of thunderstorms that could really feel like a monsoon that may produce heavy rainfall and possible flash flooding across New Mexico. And they're also saying dangerous long-duration heat is continuing over much of the central and eastern U.S. So that's what the National Weather Service is telling us. Weather-wise, yesterday in Detroit, late afternoon, we've had really, really warm weather. I mean, obviously it's summertime, so it's warm, but extremely warm, even for us in Michigan. And, of course, that humidity builds up, and then there's a storm. Well, it was monsoonal. It was like a monsoon, and there was flash flooding all over the place. But it's so weird, within 2 hours, it was gone, and it turned into a beautiful, sunny, as the sun was setting. The sun came out around 6 o'clock, and then it was a beautiful evening. But it was dangerous driving. And, again, there were flash floods. So don't take that lightly if you have that type of weather predicted for your area. Keep it in mind because it can cause a lot of problems. All right, 4 minutes past the hour. It is a Tuesday morning on EWTN. We're grateful for your listenership. We do have a lot of news to get through, so let's see what's happening in and around the world on a Tuesday morning, July 29th, here on EWTN. Horrific story out of Manhattan. 5 people are dead, including the gunman, after a shooting in Midtown Manhattan. The shooting taking place last night around 6:30 p.m. Eastern Time, when a man with an M4 rifle entered a skyscraper and began opening fire.
We lost 4 souls to another senseless act of gun violence.
That's Mayor Eric Adams, who said one of the victims was a New York police officer. The suspect is identified as Shane Tamura, who traveled across the country before arriving in New York City from Las Vegas and has a history of mental health issues. He died from an apparent self-inflicted gunshot wound. The commissioner of the police, Jessica Tisch, saying the gunman's car contained a rifle case with rounds, a loaded revolver, ammunition, and magazines. And Tisch also says the police officer is among those killed. She added during a press conference, at this point, no motive yet.
According to our law enforcement partners in Las Vegas, Mr. Tamura has a documented mental health history. His motives are still under investigation, and we are working to understand why he targeted this particular location.
Photos also emerged showing the suspect carrying a high-powered rifle. The building on Park Avenue is home to several tenants, including the National Football League. Now, there's an update on a possible motive. Investigators, though, still trying to confirm why he went on that shooting rampage, killing 4 people in Manhattan yesterday before turning the gun on himself. Scott Pringle is now reporting the man apparently left behind a suicide note.
Investigators found a note on Shane Tamura that read in part, quote, "Terry Long football gave me CTE and it caused me to drink a gallon of antifreeze. You can't go against the NFL, they'll squash you." Long was an NFL player diagnosed with a brain disease, CTE, and committed suicide. The gunman, Tamura, appears to have been a star youth football player and has a history of mental health issues. In the note, he asked for his brain to be studied. The NFL is on several floors of the building that Tamura targeted. Scott Pringle.
CTE, by the way, is a progressive brain disorder caused by repeated head injuries. Planned Parenthood, in other news, announcing the closure, as Catholic News Agency is telling us this morning, of 2 of its 6 clinics in the Houston area, including its Prevention Park location, known as the largest abortion facility in the Western Hemisphere, until the state's near total abortion ban back in 2022. Texas Right to Life President Dr. John Ciago, in an interview with Catholic News Agency, calling the Prevention Park location's closure an unmitigated victory for the pro-life movement. At its peak, he explains the center aborted up to 10,000 babies a year, up until 24 weeks of pregnancy. That information coming from Sean Carney as well, the founder and CEO of the pro-life group 40 Days for Life, whose headquarters is in Bryan, Texas, located in a former abortion facility near Texas A&M University. Located alongside the busy Gulf Freeway in Houston's East End, a Hispanic neighborhood near the University of Houston, which has 50,000 students, a Planned Parenthood Gulf Coast Prevention Park location also houses the Gulf Coast Administration offices. It was also the center for several of Planned Parenthood's global initiatives and the location of some of the most horrific scenes of the undercover videos published by the Center for Medical Progress some 10 years ago. It is also at the heart of the $1.8 billion Medicaid fraud lawsuit brought by the state of Texas back in 2022. You can check out the story in full at CatholicNewsAgency.com. And the Trump administration says it's okay for federal workers to promote their religious beliefs to colleagues, display religious items in the workplace, and to pray. That according to a memo yesterday from the Office of Personnel Management. It calls for freedom of personal religious expression unless that expression imposes an undue hardship on operations. It also says that a worker can try to witness to another of why their religious beliefs are wrong, but they must stop if asked. Tammy Trujillo tells us Harvard is reportedly prepared to spend up to $500 million to resolve the ongoing dispute with the Trump administration.
The New York Times reports that negotiations between the sides are intensifying to resolve allegations related to anti-Semitism on campus. The amount would be far above the $200 million committed by Columbia University when it recently settled anti-Semitism allegations with the White House. The Times report indicates that President Trump wants Harvard to pay far more than Columbia. I'm Tammy Trujillo.
In a message addressed to those taking part in the 28th General Assembly of the International Federation of Catholic Universities, which is being held in Guadalajara, Mexico, the Holy Father yesterday offering a reflection on the role of Catholic universities in today's world, urging them to remain rooted in Christ as a source of wisdom and truth. Pope Leo warning the contemporary cultural landscape is filled with what he called the songs of the sirens, ideas that are appealing for their novelty, popularity, or apparent certainty. In contrast, Catholic universities are called to be a pathway of the mind toward God, echoing the thought of St. Bonaventure. And quoting from the Church Fathers, including St. Augustine and St. Paul, the Holy Father highlighting the enduring need for Catholic institutions to illuminate the human spirit by anchoring knowledge in divine truth. The soul left to itself, he said, has neither light nor strength, citing Augustine. He added, it darkens when it turns away from the source of immutable truth and is illumined when it draws near. In this light, the Holy Father affirmed the university environment, marked by dialogue and intellectual plurality, is not alien to the mission of the Church. Concluding the message, Pope Leo expressing his hope that Christ's wisdom, the truth made person who draws the world to himself, would be the guiding compass for all Catholic higher education institutions. Mark Mayfield tells us this morning the Department of Justice is now filing a formal complaint against U.S. District Judge James Boasberg over accusations of misconduct.
The complaint centers around comments Boasberg reportedly made to other judges earlier this year that the Trump administration would disregard rulings of federal courts, leading to a constitutional crisis. Justice Department Chief of Staff Chad Mazzell wrote in a 5-page complaint that Boasberg's actions have harmed the integrity and public confidence in the integrity of the judiciary. Boasberg has been a constant target of President Trump, who called for his impeachment over the handling of the deportation case surrounding Venezuelans deported to a Salvadoran megaprison. I'm Mark Mayfield.
Investors watching whether the Federal Reserve decides to cut interest rates this week. The president has been putting the pressure on the Fed Chair Jerome Powell to cut rates, but most investors are expecting Powell will hold them steady. The Fed begins a 2-day meeting today ahead of a decision on U.S. interest rate levels tomorrow. Top American and Chinese officials are meeting for trade talks in Sweden. This as a president's tariff deadline of August 1st looms large. Trump just announced a trade deal with the European Union over the weekend. The White House hopes that closing a deal with China would prompt more countries to follow in their footsteps. And Michael Castor tells us the number of teens apparently committing suicide or considering suicide is actually down.
That's according to a new report from the Substance Abuse and Mental Health Services Administration that found 10% of people 12 to 17 had serious thoughts of killing themselves in 2024, down nearly 3% from 2021. Additionally, the number of depressive episodes was on the decline. The report also found that just over half of adults with mental illness sought treatment last year, more than 30 million people. If you or anyone you love is in need of help, the National Suicide and Crisis Lifeline can be reached 24/7 by calling or texting 988. I'm Michael Kastner.
Spirit Airlines is doing more belt tightening. The Florida-based discount carrier saying yesterday it will lay off some 270 pilots this fall as it reduces its off-season schedule to cut down on costs. The airline will also downgrade more than 100 pilots from captain to first officer, and that starts October 1st. Spirit has struggled to turn a profit since it emerged from Chapter 11 back in March. Industry analysts say overall travel demand has been softer than expected this year. Finally, in our news segment, at almost 14 minutes past the hour on a Tuesday morning, July 29th, Major League Baseball placing a second Cleveland Guardians player on leave. This is part of an investigation into sports betting. Yesterday, the team announcing this time it involves All-Star Emmanuel Clase. Earlier this month, Cleveland pitcher Luis Ortiz was placed on indefinite leave, reportedly due to a gambling probe. It is a Tuesday. We'll talk all about St. Thomas Aquinas and his great wisdom. That's coming up next. You don't want to miss it. Our guest, Father Ambrose Little, director of the Thomistic Institute based in D.C., is with us in studio. He's taping some shows, and he is set to be on our wonderful program, Life on the Rock, in September 7th and 14th. Father, appreciate you being in studio with us. Good morning, and congratulations on your new title, which I believe was pretty recent, actually earlier this month, named the director of the Thomistic Institute. So tell us, first of all, about the Institute and what you do there.
Well, thank you, Teresa, again for having me. And you're right, I did just start this month, so it's all kind of brand new to me, at least being in the leadership position. So what is the Thomistic Institute? The Thomistic Institute is a kind of academic arm of our faculty in Washington, D.C. that tries to bring the teachings of St. Thomas and the Catholic intellectual tradition to the academy and to campuses throughout the U.S. and the rest of the world.
So how did you get so interested when you were discerning the priesthood in St. Thomas and the Dominicans?
Well, I don't quite know how to answer that. The first time I read St. Thomas, I was just enamored of him. I was always interested in the way that he could approach a theological topic in a rational way that was clear and precise. And sometimes it can be a little bit abstract, of course, and also he can be a bit dry. But I found like the rational, structured way in which he approached questions to be immensely appealing, and I just was addicted from day one.
Yeah. Well, we were talking during the break about his presence all over Italy, especially in the beautiful Umbrian town of Orvieto, where he did so much to help us understand the gift of the Eucharist and that Eucharistic miracle. But Aquinas 101 is a resource where people can really learn more about the teachings of Aquinas. I think sometimes we hear about this amazing saint who was so brilliant, and some people may be taken aback by his intelligence and think, oh, I couldn't possibly understand him. Was this one of the reasons you wanted to come up with these online evangelization tools?
Absolutely, because St. Thomas has so much beauty in what he teaches that we want to make it accessible to people. Because you're right, because when you open up St. Thomas, it's very intimidating. It's a foreign way of writing, a foreign way of thinking. And so, but what he has to say is so profound and accessible. We just want to present it in a way that's accessible to the modern person. And Aquinas 101 does that. We try to break down his arguments and his teachings into 5 to 10 minute videos to give you an on-ramp so that you don't have to be afraid to approach St. Thomas in his actual writing.
Now, do you have to subscribe for the series of videos? Because I'm on the website right now. It's quite beautiful. Or can you just go on the website anytime to find a new video? How does it work? What would you like people to do?
Well, I would like people to go to our website, aquinas101.thomisticinstitute.org, and sign up for our learning platform. But if you just want to have a taste of it, you can also find Aquinas 101 on YouTube. So we have a YouTube channel, and that's where we began. But if you want to kind of approach the Aquinas 101 series in a more ordered way, where you can watch videos that are related to one another, the easiest way to do that is through our learning platform. And it's totally free. We just want your email so that way you can sign in and then keep track of your progress as you go. So if you start a course, you can kind of binge watch a couple of videos and then take a couple months off and start where you left off.
Was it hard to break this down into, I don't want to say sound bites because 4 or 5 minutes is a nice chunk of time. Was it difficult, though, considering the depth of St. Thomas Aquinas?
Most of us who present on Aquinas 101 are familiar enough with St. Thomas and familiar with teaching him to other people that it's not particularly difficult. It's actually what we might say a joyful challenge to try to take something that's a big topic and make it manageable for others. The biggest thing is I'm sorry about that. The biggest thing is trying to come up with images that we can use for the videos, because we like our videos to kind of show in an illustrative way the teachings of St. Thomas to make it even more accessible.
So how have you been able to do that in terms of finding the right videos? Because that's a lot of work.
It is a lot of work, but we have a great team. We have a great producer who is helping us to put these videos together. We work with a wonderful kind of illustration team, and they called Early Light Media that does a fantastic job. We've been working with them for many years, and we're really pleased. And they're very easy to work with. And we present them images, and they kind of help put those images into kind of visual form, and then we talk through any questions that we might have, and then present it to the public.
We're talking with Father Ambrose Little, who just recently was appointed director of the Thomistic Institute. That was actually effective July 1st, so it's a brand new position for him. I think this is wonderful because I think we have such a treasure in our saints, especially the biggies like Thomas Aquinas, and some of us don't take the time, again, Father, because we think it's too much over our head. But I don't think we should ever let that dissuade us from learning more about what the saints have to teach us.
Well, when you think about it, all of us interact with the teachings of St. Thomas every time we come to adoration, because all of the hymns that we use, the Tantum Ergo and things like that, are written by St. Thomas. And so most of us have a familiarity with the poetry of St. Thomas. And this poetry of St. Thomas comes out of his great love of the Lord. You know, in Aristotle, in the Metaphysics, when he talks about the role of philosophy, he says the philosopher is not that much different from the poet, because both of them begin their research in wonder. It's just that the poet expresses that wonder in one way, the philosopher expresses it in another way. And in St. Thomas, you get both.
I was going to say, because he's a philosopher and a theologian.
That's
correct?
right.
I mean, yeah. So is there a favorite teaching or writing? I mean, obviously we have the Summa, and you have that links to that on your website as well, that you are fond of in terms of St. Thomas. There's so much, but if there's a particular quote or something that you find yourself as a priest going back to for your own meditation and reflection, what would it be, do you think?
Well, probably my favorite quote comes from the Summa Contra Gentiles, where he discusses the role of the wise man. And he begins with this beautiful prayer about how how he's taking upon himself the task of the wise man, though he is unworthy, and yet he has been asked to do it, and so he goes forward with it. And then he gives this beautiful quote from Saint Hilary of Poitiers. And so I find myself constantly going back to that because, those of us who are teachers of philosophy, teachers of theology, when we are honest, we recognize that we are approaching mysteries that we ourselves barely understand and yet have to help others to understand. And so we take on the role of a wise person, but we need divine assistance so that where we fail, God may fill in.
You mentioned, Father, early on in the interview that you're hoping that we were trying to get this, and you already are, but getting this around the world. Are you offering the videos in different languages, or is it primarily in English right now?
So all of the videos are produced in English, but we are translating the subtitles professionally into different languages. And so we have a lot of the videos already translated professionally into Spanish and French and Portuguese, and then a little bit into other languages as well. So we're trying to make sure that there are professionalized translations in many languages.
Given the depth and the amount of work in the writings that St. Thomas gave us, I imagine you could do videos from now until the second coming of our Lord. But how many videos do you think you'll be doing in this series, Aquinas 101, on the website?
Well, I mean, it's like you indicated, we really just have an indefinite idea,
right.
So that we're planning like a year out the videos that we're doing. We try to mix the videos between having more serious, in-depth, kind of thoughtful ones, and then try to go to things that are a little bit lighter and easier and more devotional. So we go back and forth with a couple of different things. So right now, we have a series we're doing on the sacraments, and we're doing that not only to help people to understand the sacraments, but also to help parishes and teachers and catechists who want to give people more resources to understand the sacraments, some videos they can send them to.
Yeah, I think I was just going to say, could even be a great resource for OCIA, don't you think, especially where the sacraments are concerned?
Absolutely. Although we do have a kind of OCIA program called Credo. So the OCI programs can use the Credo series, which has its own videos, and then use Aquinas 101 to supplement or to give people more. Because people always want something else to go to. And so being able to provide more content to look at the same topics from a slightly different angle helps people to come to understand the truths more deeply.
Are there any particular churches, of course, St. Thomas being from Italy, are there any particular churches in Italy or elsewhere around the world that you love to visit and reflect upon the gift that we have in St. Thomas? You have a favorite church?
Well, St. Thomas's relics are found at the Church of the Jacobin in Toulouse. Mm-hmm. And just being able, it's actually, unfortunately, a museum right now, but to be able to go there and to spend time with him and to pray with his relics is a tremendous gift. So if anybody's in Toulouse, I highly suggest going there to visit him.
Also, maybe to Orvieto in the cathedral there because of the images and the miracle. That's a great place, too, if they're in Italy. And, of course, the Dominicans are all over Santa Maria sopra Minerva as well. Father, thank you so much. This is awesome. I can't wait to check out. I did look at some of them. I can't wait to check out further. Go to Aquinas101.thomisticinstitute.org for more information. We'll be right back. Hope you're having a beautiful Tuesday. Always great, informative, and so helpful to check in with our dear friend, sociologist, PhD, author, speaker, defender of the faith, Bill Donahue of the Catholic League. I'm just going to read the summary on the homepage. Well, you can actually get to it. It's right. You just scroll down. New report on Biden FBI Catholic spy ring. And I mentioned at the top of the hour that this is a recent story. On July 22nd, an interim staff report on President Biden's FBI Catholic spy ring was released by House Judiciary Committee Chair Jim Jordan. Thanks to Kash Patel, the current FBI director, some of the information is new. When pieced together what we already knew, the picture that emerges is one of an FBI that went off the rails. Christopher Wray, who led the FBI under Biden, bears much of the blame. You know, Bill, thanks for joining us. When this story first broke about, it's one FBI office, it's one rogue FBI office that went a little bit off the rails, it's an outlier, it's the only one, stop panicking, stop clutching your pearls. You know, as a reporter, I looked at this and said, seriously, where there's smoke, there's fire. And I knew just in my gut as a reporter that there was more to this story and that it was coming from the central offices was my interpretation, was my opinion based on, years of being a reporter and covering different stories. It was huge, right?
It was enormous. And the thing is that Christopher Wray lied about it. He said it was just the Richmond office. There was a whistleblower who let us know about the information. It wasn't Richmond. It was also Portland. It was also Milwaukee. It was also Louisville. Now there's an international dimension with the latest information. They had the London field office of the FBI involved in spying on Catholics. Now, the media have not been covering this for the most part, and it's astonishing to me. You know, they used this as a pretext. They went after these so-called rad-trads, the radical traditionalists, who, by the way, in this latest report, and I love Jim Jordan because he's the one who made this happen along with Kash Patel to release this information. They asked the FBI field operatives, could you define what a radical traditionalist is? Most of them couldn't even do it. And the reason they couldn't do it is because they're trying to link people who are not even in full communion with the Catholic Church to ordinary Catholics and then to violent extremists. I mean, listen, there are a lot of good people who belong to the Society of St. Pius X. I'm not doubting that, but they're not in full communion with the Church. The FBI knows this, and they use them as a pretext, as a landing board to go after all Catholics. The whole goal was to go after mainline practicing Catholics, and for issues which I'd be glad to talk about.
All right, so let's talk about the issues because it's just to me so insane. You had this happening under and I'm doing the air quotes now, a Catholic president, Joe Biden, who said that, his Catholic faith was so important to him. This to me is just is so wrong. What was the goal? Why? Why pick on Catholics, do you think? What are the issues?
Well, it's interesting. They didn't pick on dissident Catholics, all right? These people who are in rebellion against the Catholic Church's teachings. Many of them are well organized. Many of them are well funded by left-wing philanthropic organizations. They didn't regard them as the threat, which they are the threat to our society and to the Catholic Church in particular. They went after people whom I would regard and you would regard as pro-life Catholics. They said the FBI was investigating Catholics who evinced, quote, hostility toward abortion rights advocates. Now, our hostility is against the killing of the children in the womb. That's what our hostility is to. We're pro-life Catholics. And those who evinced also were concerned about, quote, conservative family values and roles. They were called radical. In other words, if you don't buy into the LGBT agenda, then somehow you are a radical and therefore you're worthy of being spied on. This had nothing to do with some outlier groups like SSPX, the Society of St. Pius X. It had to do with the Catholics in the pews. The ones who paid the bills, the ones who go to church on a regular basis, tend to be loyal sons and daughters of the Catholic Church. And for this, they were targeted by Biden's FBI.
So there's a quote in here, FBI employees believe without evidence that mainstream Catholic churches could serve as a pipeline to violent extremist behavior. And they said this without evidence, obviously.
That's just it. There's no evidence whatsoever. This is why I regard this as one of the grandest examples of the violation of civil liberties of innocent Americans in recent times. You can't even define the terms rad-trad, radical traditionalist Catholic. Your goal is to go after the Catholics in the pew. You have no evidence whatsoever that very conservative Catholics are engaged in violence. You can find a lot of that on the other side of the secularists. You'll have no problem finding that. But they're not interested in Antifa or Black Lives Matter. They're going after pro-life Catholics and those who ascribe to traditional moral values. This was basically the weaponization of the FBI under Biden-Harris because they regarded them as not being friendly to their administration. Well, yes, of course. The Biden-Harris administration will go down in history as one of the least religion-friendly, and I could say stronger things than that we've seen in recent times, if not in all of American history.
As you said in this report, it's well planned. You can't just do something like this overnight. So they had to be working on this for some time.
Well, they were. And listen to this. What kind of articles were they reading that would inspire them to go after ordinary Catholics? Here's one of them. How extremist gun culture is trying to co-opt the rosary. I mean, this is really the theater of the absurd. They're reading stuff from the Southern Poverty Law Center, which is a hate group, which claims to be monitoring hate groups, and of course the Atlantic.
But also came under all kinds of investigative problems because of abuse and everything else. So how can they even use them as a solid source?
It is amazing. They were really reaching. This was a mad quest, a search for wrongdoing on the part of traditionalist Catholics. And, I would have thought maybe they'd find something. I mean, after all, if you unleash all these different field offices in the United States, as well as the London field office, this is brand new from Jim Jordan and what he's reporting, you really understand the scope of this was huge. And they were really going after the practicing Catholics. And that's why this is not being talked about from the pew. It's not being talked about from the podium, in the homilies. The pastors really need to talk about it. The United States Conference of Catholic Bishops needs to talk about it. But there's too much quietude. And it's not just in the mainstream press. It's even in our own ranks. We don't talk about it as much as we should.
Well, see, this is what's so frustrating to me is that if you talk to even, let's say, a faithful Catholic who's trying to do their best to follow the teachings, they don't know about this. They don't know how serious this is and what was going on under the previous administration and the attacks on the church. And some of them don't even want to believe it. They don't believe, well, I could still go to Mass. I'm fine. I still have my ability to go to Mass and receive Jesus in the Eucharist. But it's so much more. We can't put our faith in a box. Our faith is not just church, not that the Eucharist is not the source and summit, because it is, but we don't limit ourselves to that. That's not what the Constitution gives us.
No, we have the right to publicly express our religion. It was Hillary Clinton who came out and said we have the freedom to worship. Sorry. Freedom to worship? Oh, little old ladies in church? No. I have a right to publicly proclaim the excellence of my religion and to do it in the public square. It's called freedom of religion. It's in the First Amendment to the Bill of Rights. So the idea that you can, what they call in legal terms, cabin this and just marginalize it, and so I'm allowed to pray in church. Thanks a lot. No, we can have Eucharistic processions in the streets. We can do what we want. But you mentioned this about. I'm glad you mentioned this, Teresa. People say, "Well, I'm okay. I'm not being bothered." Yeah, because we found out because of a whistleblower. What if we didn't have a whistleblower?
Exactly.
What then, people?
Right. Hang on. We'll talk more about this with our friend Dr. Bill Donahue, president of Catholic League, finding out the scope of the FBI investigation under the previous administration of Catholics. What were they going to do with that information? We'll have more on that as well. We'll be right back. Welcome back, Catholic Connection. Always great to catch up with Bill Donahue. He is out there checking out what is affecting our Catholic faith and those of us who want to practice it to the best of our ability, God willing, to follow the teachings and to be able to express it in the public square, freedom of speech, freedom of religion. So, Bill, in terms of where they were going with this, what do you think would have happened? Because this was under the Biden-Harris administration. Had the election gone differently, where do you think we would be today? Because this was a long-term plan. You don't just plan something like this overnight, considering the fact that it went all the way over to London. It was spread well beyond the Richmond office, all over the country. What do you think their big goal was with this? I
think their goal is they've made it clear that abortion and traditional moral values, family values, was what was upsetting them. So clearly, we've seen already with Jane's Revenge, this terrorist group assaulting these alternative abortion centers, the crisis pregnancy centers, and we've seen what they've done with these people. The FBI has already had some Gestapo-like tactics in what they've done. This was going to go after pro-life activists, even worse than what they were before, and anybody who might be perceived as being against the whole transgender insanity in this country, which is obviously, to me, I regard this as the number one child abuse issue in America today. The idea that we're involved in chemical castration, hormones being blocked, genital mutilation of minors. because they think they can switch their sex, which they cannot do so. It's biologically impossible. That they would have gone after anybody who was an advocate or an activist. It was not the Biden administration, but rather the Obama administration, which went after me personally in 2008 when Obama was elected. The IRS was coming down my throat because I was defending the rights of the unborn and traditional moral values. I won't bore the listeners with this, but it went on for about a year and a half, and they gave me a slap in the wrist, and I said, listen, I'm going to go back. You're not going to defeat me. I'm going to go back, and I'm going to be defiant. I am not going to give up, and you're going to have to arrest me if you want to, because I have a First Amendment right, freedom of speech, freedom of religion to do this. And the guy said to me, his name was Peter Malarkey out of Brooklyn, and he said, Bill, I'm just here to tell you what the IRS told me. I said, good. You tell your friends in Irving, Texas, what I told you. I am not going to stop. And they did beg off on me. But under Biden-Harris, or if Harris had won, oh my God, where would they have gone next?
All right, so what we know that this was rooted out, and thanks be to God for Jim Jordan. He's done a great job on so many other stories similar to this in investigations. But, okay, are there people left inside the administration, the current administration? Because this was so widespread, Bill, and it was so well planned that did they root it all out? Because there could be, some people who are lying in wait to do something else.
You have about 3,000 people that the president is able to appoint. You have about 3 million people working in the federal government. So obviously they're still there. They regard the new administration that comes in as the Christmas help, and so that you can't get rid of them. Obviously they've been quiet now. They're going underground because they don't have any support because Trump won't put up with it. And Kash Patel and Dan Bongino, these are good people. But if the Democrats get back in again, they really have become the party of militant secularism. We're not talking here about just having a liberal point of view, and we might disagree with them. They're embedded in the federal government. So while they're in retreat right now, it's just a matter of time if they get back in.
But we need people know about this because elections matter, and it's really, really important for us to understand our rights. I was reading you another positive story that came out, a religious story that came out yesterday. And let me share this with you and get your reaction to it. This is really literally hot off the presses. The Trump administration says it's okay for federal workers to promote their religious beliefs to colleagues, display religious items in the workplace, and to pray. That's according to a Monday memo from the Office of Personnel Management. It calls for freedom of personal religious expression unless that expression imposes an undue hardship on operations. It also says that a worker can try to convince another of why their religious beliefs are wrong, but must stop if asked. This is huge when so many people have been hauled into court, have been fired, have been treated very badly at their place of work by basically wearing a cross or wearing something, maybe another religious item, or displaying maybe something on their desk. And this is huge to me.
It is huge, and because it particularly in the federal workplace, people are afraid to wear a crucifix, that people are afraid to have a rosary on their desk. Look, there's a difference between somebody who is simply expressing his or her feelings about religion and religious liberty and someone who's going to be a scold and going to be trying to proselytize you and beat you down and tell you. Now, nobody's interested in that. That's a form of a verbal harassment. We're talking here about somebody who rationally is simply and moderately expressing his religion. It could be Islam, it could be Christianity, it could be Judaism, whatever it is. The idea that somehow I need to neuter myself in the public square on this, but I could have things out there on my desk which are anti-religious, that's been going on, and nobody says a word about that. So all what Trump is doing here is trying to equal the playing field. And again, we're not looking at hardcore proselytizing in the workplace. We're talking about religious expression in its most modest form to be expressed.
Of course, that's what the media are saying. The media are making it sound like, if you look up the headlines, and I had to rewrite the story that I ran this morning in the sense of what they were saying, that made it sound like the Christians are going to go into, and they were inferring that it was mainly Christians, okay, so they didn't get the whole scope, I think, of what the current administration was trying to say, as you pointed out, what it actually represents. But they are trying to give people the impression, beware, be very afraid, be afraid, because people are going to walk in, these crazy Christians, with their soapbox and throw the Bible at you and, shut down the office because they're going to be preaching and teaching. No, that's not what he's saying.
No. And, let me say something. I've written a PhD dissertation and 2 books on the ACLU and monographs and the like. when I've debated ACLU operatives in the past, I say you're supporting the open sale and distribution of pornography, including child pornography, and you're saying that if I don't like it, I should, quote, avert my eyes. Well, I say to them, if you see a nativity scene on public property and you find that
avert your eyes.
obscene, just avert your eyes, okay?
Yeah.
And the same is true in the workplace. No, they'll always drum up the Christians because they're the guys, and particularly the Catholics. They always want to get after the Catholics with the big fat target.
We're talking with Bill Donahue, a basis of our discussion this morning. Their new report that's posted on their website. By the way, sign up for their e-blasts. They're fantastic. New report on Biden, FBI, Catholic spying. Just those words strung together, Biden-FBI, Catholic spying, when I keep thinking about the fact that he always talked about his Catholic faith, it just, I can't wrap my head around that still after all these years.
Yeah, I mean, he's regarded as the devout Catholic. You know what? I'll take a secularist who's not a radical over somebody like him. I've never seen an administration which declared war on Catholics more than the Biden administration, led by the devout Catholic. Whether or not he was all in command of his faculties is open question, but he certainly allowed people to run wild. And his wife and all of his, Ron Klain and the whole crew, they knew all about it. These people have become the enemy of religion.
Why did they spread this spy ring, go over to London? Did they have some idea? Because in England, for example, there was a huge amount of Catholics that came into converts that came into the church. And were they aware of the movement of the Catholic faith, or why do you think they went over to Great Britain?
I think they wanted to learn from what the Brits are doing. There are many examples, not just a few here, Teresa, where you've had a priest or a nun simply standing outside an abortion clinic and they're being arrested. You know why? Because the cop comes along, they're Bobby, whatever they call him over there, and they say, "What are you doing?" "I'm praying." "Well, what are you praying about?" "I'm praying for the unborn." You can't do that. You're not even speaking. You're just simply there in silence. And they're being arrested for this in England, the home of the Magna Carta. And again, this is happening throughout Europe, but particularly in England, what they're doing is arresting people, and they're arresting Protestants as well for simply having a silent prayer. I think they're looking to learn from them and what they can do and to apply it over in this country as a template.
What about that office that was involved in this? What do we know about what's happening there? Has that been broken down? Have they been?
No, we don't have as much information about the London office as I'd like to see. There are some references in the report that came out July the 22nd. I've read the entire report, too. I mean, I'm not going to go with a synopsis off of some secular media, which is going to give the interpretation for me. I'm able to find material when I dive into it because I've read all the previous reports, and we've been in constant contact with Jim Jordan over the last several years. He's a great guy. His staff is great. And the committee is great. I don't know what we do without him. But, no, I'd like to find out a little bit more about it, and maybe we can talk about that if we do find out more.
You know, Bill, you're doing the work of the secular media. Obviously, you're coming at this as a concerned Catholic, but someone should have been taking the bull by the horns with this and doing the same thing you were doing to get to the bottom of it in the secular media, regardless of whether they were going after the Catholic Church or another religious entity. For the media just to accept the fact that, it was just in one office. Are you kidding me? Seriously? Give me a break. Where did they go to journalism school? What, did they get their journalism degree online, by just going for some sort of certificate? This is what's so frustrating to me, because if this were happening, if it were a reverse situation and they were going after liberals, the FBI or a particular liberal group, the media would have been all over this and they would have done all kinds of investigation, but they did not touch this except to report on the basics. And when the FBI put out the quote, it's just one office. It's just one office.
And,
really?
We've known about the secularization of the media for a long time. There was a good friend of mine, a Jewish guy who passed away, Stanley Rothman, a brilliant guy.
I remember him. He did all the research on the bias in the media. I quote him in my books. Yep.
Oh, you're the best, girl.
I know all about him. He did. Yeah. He went all the way back and looked at the heads of the newspapers, the newspaper editors. He did one of the biggest reports back in the 80s on media bias.
Yes, he did. The media elite. Him and that's Robert Lichter and Linda Lichter.
Yep.
And I corresponded with them, but Stanley I knew. We served on the board of directors of the National Association of Scholars for years, and he taught at Smith College. Yeah, he broke the story on
the Rothman-Lichter report. I did so much on that, and I talk about it all the time when I give my talks on media influence. This is what people need to know, and they don't know it. That's what's so frustrating to me.
Well, you've got this kind of monopoly here on the left. I mean, there are very few conservative sources out there, at least in the mainstream media. Most of them on the left, certainly the broadcast media and most of the cable. And then, so it's difficult to get the word out. But what you're doing, what I'm trying to do, and others, we're trying to get the word out. Listen, we're not losing everything, all right? Harris lost, didn't she? In fact, she couldn't win one of the 7 swing states. That tells us something. So there is a kind of a reawakening in this country.
I hope so.
That things have gone so far off the deep end. Now we have to worry about places like Minneapolis and New York City, where they want these socialists to take over the cities. So this is a fight that's going to be fought. And the latest report is New York, New Jersey, California, Massachusetts, all the left-wing states, they're losing people by the millions. By the millions. New York and New Jersey, number one. People are taking their jobs with them, their tax base, and guess what? They're also their electoral college votes once they move from the blue states to the red states. So I'm not entirely pessimistic about the future.
No, I'm not pessimistic, and I'm just grateful that you are putting this out there for people. My frustration is, though, with the media, because this is a Pulitzer Prize winning story if you get to the bottom of this in terms of, and it shouldn't matter where you stand. Just like early Berliner, who left PBS, NPR was saying that, look, he was a lefty. He admitted it. He said, but that's got nothing to do with it. And now he's doing great work on another site. But these are the kind of stories that the secular media should be digging their teeth into. But they won't, because they agree, as Rothman told us years ago, with the left on most things. Bill, there's so much here to digest and to unpack, but we will have you on. I'd like to get your reaction. I know you said you want to do some more research on the decision coming out of the Trump administration yesterday, so let's have you back on again real soon.
Sounds great. Thank you so much.
All right, my dear. Have a great week. Bill Donahue, of course, the one, the only, CatholicLeague.org. New report on Biden FBI Catholic spy ring. No, it wasn't just one office. It was across the country and even across the pond, all the way over to England. We'll be right back. Five minutes past the hour. Thank you for listening to EWTN's Catholic Connection here on EWTN Global Catholic Radio. Coming up on EWTN Radio Extra, hour number 2. And just a fun reminder, a couple of days from now on Monday, I'm going to be live from the beautiful Grand Hotel for our Grand Hotel Getaway. And we are going to have a full hour of fantastic interviews with Dr. Ted Shree, who's going to be one of our keynote speakers, a good friend of mine, awesome evangelist and theologian. We also have Father Leo, who's going to be there, Father Michael Schmitz, and oh boy, even more. So we're just going to line them up and have a great time talking to all these great Catholic influencers. And that will be live Monday from the Grand Hotel on beautiful Mackinac Island, which is in the Straits of Mackinac between the Upper Peninsula and the Lower Peninsula. If you've never been, beautiful part of the country, you really need to visit. And we already are planning for next year the Grand Hotel Getaway. You can go to ctscentral.net and also just do research or do a Google for Grand Hotel Getaway. They managed to get a few other rooms, but I think they're sold out by now. Anyhow, coming up next hour, looking forward to having our Newman Guide News on a Tuesday. Kelly Salomon is back with us. They have their new magazine from the Cardinal Newman Society out, hot off the presses, and some great stories in there for parents interested in learning more about real Catholic education. So we'll have 2 segments with Kelly. And then for my 2 cents segment, we are going to show you or talk about some of the great sites you can visit if you're going to be in Italy. Maybe you're leaving now, or if you plan to go in the near future and you want to pick up on the canonization of Pier Giorgio Frassati and Carlo Acutis, some great places to go in relationship to them. And we'll have more on that tomorrow as well in our Shrines and Wonders Wednesday. We'll be right back.
Welcome to Catholic Connection with Teresa Tomeo, keeping you connected to your faith and your world. Teresa tackles the issues of faith and culture, the pro-life message, and media awareness. And now, here's Teresa Tomeo.
It's a Tuesday. It's July 29th. It's a second hour of Catholic Connection here on EWTN's Radio Extra. We're so happy you're tuned in. Thank you so much. Coming up, we have, of course, news. I have an update on the terrible shooting yesterday in New York City. Pray for the families. and for all those who are impacted by this. We'll have T's 2 Cents taking a look at some of the activities going on this week in Roma for the Jubilee of Youth, which will wrap up this weekend. And of course, Pope Leo very involved in that. This is such an amazing opportunity on so many levels for our young people, because not only will they be learning about the witness of two great saints, Carlo Acutis, teenager, well, he's a teenager, was a teenager when he died, 15, and then the young but just amazing Pier Giorgio Frassati. What an opportunity and what great witnesses. And both of these young men were so in love with the Eucharist, really. To the point where we know Carlo Acutis put together so many great displays and gathered a lot of information about the Eucharistic miracles and websites, because he had a knack for technology. And many of those, the information he gathered, the reports, the websites, and all of the different displays are used to really talk about the Eucharist and especially Eucharistic miracles. So we'll talk about that in T's 2 Cents. I also do want to let you know about our 2 trips coming up next year. We have one with Dr. Matthew Bunson in the Footprints of the Popes, another with Kelly Walquist for the ladies, of course, and we are going next year with the ladies to the Amalfi Coast and Puglia. Not Puglia, but Puglia. Both two beautiful southern areas of Italy, one on the Mediterranean, the other on the Adriatic, both very faithful areas, and those will be next year. We'll talk a little bit about that if we have time. All right, and then as I mentioned, Newman Guide News with Kelly Salomon, 2 segments from Kelly. Their magazine is out now, and I'll tell you, even though we don't have any children who are going to school, or our nieces are too young at this point, our grandnieces, they're still in grade school, obviously, but the information that they provide and the beautiful stories that they provide, the witness, the testimonies of various people, what they're doing to keep Catholic schools truly Catholic. This magazine is very informative, so I would highly encourage you to sign up for it and to check out the great work of the Cardinal Newman Society. We'll discuss more with Kelly Salomon beginning at the bottom of the hour. I also want to remind folks in Michigan, if you're listening, I'm going to be speaking for the Mother of God group at the end of, well, actually, beginning of September. Second weekend of September after Labor Day. I'll be doing a women's retreat all about Mary, our mother and our role model. You can find information on that at teresatomeo.com under my events section. We'd love to have you join us, ladies, and you don't have to be from the Detroit area. If you're in Toledo or maybe Lansing or somewhere else and you're coming into Michigan for a little break, come on by. It's going to be a great day. All right, weather-wise, we still have a lot of problems. We have some thunderstorms and heavy rain possible in the northern and central plains. So severe thunderstorms, the National Weather Service says, capable of producing damaging winds and isolated large hail and heavy rain are possible across the northern and central plains. And they're saying thunderstorms that will have a monsoon effect, meaning look out, the rain and winds are coming. We had that coming through yesterday afternoon in Detroit. May produce heavy rainfall and possible flash flooding, this across New Mexico. And they're also saying dangerous long-duration heat continuing over much of the central and eastern parts of the country. So that is your weather forecast here on a Tuesday morning, July 29th. It is 10:03 Eastern Time. Thanks for tuning in here on EWTN Radio Extra. Let's check the news now on EWTN. Well, as we mentioned, a major story out of New York City. 5 people are dead, including the gunman, after a shooting in Midtown Manhattan taking place last night around 6:30 local time, when a man with an M4 rifle entered a skyscraper and began opening fire.
We lost 4 souls to another senseless act of gun violence.
That's Mayor Eric Adams, who said one of the victims was a New York police officer. The suspect, identified as Shane Tamura, traveled cross-country before arriving in New York City from Vegas, and he has a history of mental health issues. He died from an apparent self-inflicted gunshot wound. New York Police Department Commissioner Jessica Tisch saying the gunman's car also contained a rifle case with rounds, a loaded revolver, ammunition, and magazine. And she adds that, again, a police officer is among those killed. She spoke during a press conference last night saying they're still trying to figure out the motive.
According to our law enforcement partners in Las Vegas, Mr. Tamura has a documented mental health history. His motives are still under investigation, and we are working to understand why he targeted this particular location.
Photos have emerged showing the suspect carrying a high-powered rifle through the streets of New York on the way to the building. The building on Park Avenue is home to several tenants, including the National Football League. Meanwhile, as we just mentioned, investigators are still trying to figure it all out, piece it together as to why the gunman went on that shooting rampage. Manhattan office building yesterday afternoon before turning the gun on himself. Scott Pringle tells us there's news that he left behind a suicide note.
Investigators found a note on Shane Tamara that read in part, quote, "Terry Long football gave me CTE and it caused me to drink a gallon of antifreeze. You can't go against the NFL, they'll squash you." Long was an NFL player diagnosed with a brain disease, CTE, and committed suicide. The gunman, Tamara, appears to have been a star youth football player and has a history of mental health issues. In the note, he asked for his brain to be studied. The NFL is on several floors of the building that Tamara targeted.
CTE, by the way, is a progressive brain disorder caused by repeated head injuries. In other news this morning, Catholic News Agency tells us Planned Parenthood announcing the closure of 2 of its 6 clinics in the Houston area, including its Prevention Park location, which was known as the largest abortion facility in the Western Hemisphere until the state's near total abortion ban back in 2022. Texas Right to Life President Dr. John Ciago, in an interview with CNA, calling the Prevention Park location's closure an unmitigated victory for life. At its peak, this center aborted 10,000 babies a year, he said, up until 24 weeks of pregnancy. Located along the busy Gulf Freeway in Houston's East End, Hispanic neighborhood near the University of Houston, which has 50,000 students, the Planned Parenthood Gulf Coast Prevention Park location also houses a Gulf Coast administrative offices. It was also the center for several of Planned Parenthood's global initiatives, according to Ciago, and the location of some of the most horrific scenes of the undercover videos published by the Center for Medical Progress back in 2015. It is also at the heart of the $1.8 billion Medicaid fraud lawsuit brought by the state of Texas in 2022. And the Trump administration says it's okay for federal workers to promote their religious beliefs to colleagues, display religious items in the workplace, and to pray. That, according to a memo yesterday from the Office of Personnel Management. It calls for freedom of personal religious expression unless that expression imposes an undue hardship on operations. It also says that a worker can try to convince another of why their religious beliefs are wrong, but must stop if asked. Tammy Trujillo tells us Harvard is reportedly prepared to spend up to $500 million to resolve the ongoing dispute with the Trump administration.
Negotiations between the sides are intensifying to resolve allegations related to anti-Semitism on campus. The amount would be far above the $200 million committed by Columbia University when it recently settled anti-Semitism allegations with the White House. The Times report indicates that President Trump wants Harvard to pay far more than Columbia. I'm Tammy Trujillo.
In a message addressed to those taking part in the 28th General Assembly of the International Federation of Catholic Universities held in Mexico, the Holy Father yesterday offering a reflection on the role of Catholic universities in today's world, urging them to remain rooted in Christ as a source of wisdom and truth. The Pope warning, according to Vatican News, that the contemporary cultural landscape is filled with what he called songs of sirens, or ideas that are appealing for their novelty, popularity, or apparent certainty. In contrast, he said, Catholic universities are called to be a pathway of the mind toward God, echoing the thought of St. Bonaventure. Quoting from the Church Fathers, including St. Augustine and St. Paul, the Pope highlighting that enduring the need for Catholic institutions to illuminate the human spirit by anchoring knowledge in divine truth. He said the soul left to itself has neither light nor strength, citing Augustine. He says it darkens when it turns away from the source of immutable truth and is brightened when it draws near. In this light, the Holy Father affirming that the university environment marked by dialogue and intellectual plurality is not alien to the mission of the Church, concluding the message, the Pope expressing his hope that Christ's wisdom, the truth-made person, who draws the world to himself, would be the guide, compass for all Catholic higher education institutions. Mark Mayfield tells us the Department of Justice is filing a formal complaint against U.S. District Judge James Boasberg over accusations of misconduct.
The complaint centers around comments Boasberg reportedly made to other judges earlier this year that the Trump administration would disregard rulings of federal courts, leading to a constitutional crisis. Justice Department Chief of Staff Chad Mazzell wrote in a 5-page complaint that Boasberg's actions have harmed the integrity and public confidence in the integrity of the judiciary. Boasberg has been a constant target of President Trump, who called for his impeachment over the handling of the deportation case surrounding Venezuelans deported to a Salvadoran megaprison. I'm Mark Mayfield.
Top American and Chinese officials are meeting for trade talks in Sweden. This as President Trump's tariff deadline of August 1st looms large. Trump just announced a trade deal with the European Union, the White House hoping that closing a deal with China could prompt more countries to follow suit. And investors watching whether the Fed decides to cut interest rates this week. President Trump has been putting the pressure on Fed Chair Jerome Powell to cut rates, but most investors are expecting Powell will hold them steady. The Fed begins a two-day meeting today ahead of a decision on U.S. interest rate levels, which is expected tomorrow. Michael Kastner tells us the number of teens considering suicide has apparently dropped.
That's according to a new report from the Substance Abuse and Mental Health Services Administration that found 10% of people 12 to 17 had serious thoughts of killing themselves in 2024, down nearly 3% from 2021. Additionally, the number of depressive episodes was on the decline. The report also found that just over half of adults with mental illness sought treatment last year, more than 30 million people. If you or anyone you love is in need of help, the National Suicide and Crisis Lifeline can be reached 24/7 by calling or texting 988. I'm Michael Kastner.
Spirit Airlines is doing more belt tightening. The Florida-based discount carrier saying yesterday it's going to lay off 270 pilots this fall. As it reduces its off-season schedule to cut costs, the airline will also downgrade more than 100 pilots from captain to first officer. That'll happen as of October 1st. Spirit has struggled to turn a profit since it emerged from Chapter 11 bankruptcy in March. Industry analysts say overall travel demand has been softer than expected this year. And finally, in our news segment, at about 12 minutes past the hour, I'm sure if you've ever planned a wedding, you realize how expensive it is. Well, Bree Tennis tells us apparently there's some big new trends in weddings, and it's all about the word small.
According to the Knot.com, the average cost of a wedding for 100 guests is now $33,000, with nearly 34% of couples paying for some of the wedding, about 17% paying for all of it. With that, the wedding report says 18% of all weddings are now going micro. That's a guest list of 50 or less. And that reduction is reflected in the cost, with the average micro nuptials running less than $10,000. I'm Bree Tennis.
It is a Tuesday morning. We appreciate your listenership and glad you're tuned into the second hour of Catholic Connection here on EWTN Radio Extra. Coming up for our T's 2 Cents segment after the break, maybe you can't get to Rome this year or this summer, but you certainly can learn more about the two saints being celebrated and honored and venerated by thousands of young people who are in Rome right now for the Jubilee of Youth. Now, many of the people who are there for the Jubilee of Youth most likely won't be back for September 7th, which is the actual day of the canonizations of Pier Giorgio Frassati and Carlo Acutis, but they certainly have the opportunity to grow closer to both of them. And so do you. And we'll take you there when we come back. Hope you're having a great day. It is a Tuesday, middle of summer, although the culture has us thinking it's over. Back to school, Halloween, even Christmas. No, don't go there. Stay where we are. Stay in the moment every day with God. Every day is a gift, and we need to enjoy it. And I'll tell you what, thousands of young people have flooded into the area in and around Rome for the Jubilee of Youth, which will conclude this weekend. Now, it was supposed to conclude with the canonization this weekend of the amazing Blessed Pier Giorgio Frassati, but that has been moved to September 7th, along with the canonization of the amazing Carlo Acutis. Carlo was supposed to be, if you recall, canonized back in April, but then the Holy Father, Pope Francis, passed away, so obviously all that changed. But either way, if you have young people going, or if you would love to learn more about the places that are important to these saints, well, I would really encourage you to get a copy, first and foremost, of my book published by EWTN. It's called Italy's Shrines and Wonders. And it's just a beautiful book. They did such a great job on it with the pictures. It's a guidebook, but it's so much more than that. We take you into these towns. We teach you more about the saints. We show you how the areas in which they lived helped form them and what they learned. For example, if you look at Pier Giorgio Frassati from northern Italy in Piedmont, or Piemonte, as they say in Italy, he was from Torino, the beautiful northern town very close to France of Torino, and it was right there at the mountains. And so he would often go off and hike into the mountains with his friends. And he loved it. And he talked about going to the heights. And he meant that not just for mountain climbing, but for the heights of our faith, to really live and to always look up. As a matter of fact, one of my favorite quotes, I actually have it on my bulletin board, and it sits below a picture of Frassati. He says, "To live without faith is not to live, but to exist." Live, don't just exist. So what he's saying is, again, as I mentioned in starting this segment, to live and to really embrace life and what the gift that God has given you in your particular gifts. So if you are thinking about, or maybe you're going over to Italy, and let's say you're going to be there after the Jubilee of Youth, which will end this weekend. If you have a young person, though, that's there, you want to make sure that they are going to be going to these very special places. So I would encourage you, in addition to getting my book, as I mentioned, Italy, Shrines and Wonders, to go to the Church Pop website today, which is a really cool site. I love Church Pop. They put together a couple of stories, the must-see sites to visit if you're in Rome for the Jubilee of Youth. Now, we were talking about this yesterday on the Sunrise Morning Show. I do a Monday morning segment with Anna Mitchell and Matt Swaim every Monday. And we were talking about the beautiful church of Santa Maria sopra Minerva. It's a Dominican church. And Catherine of Siena, the late Dominican, part of her relics are there. And so that's one reason to go. And Pier Giorgio Frassati, who also was a lay Dominican, his body was moved from Torino and has been placed in Santa Maria sopra Minerva for a limited time for the young people to venerate this week. And so if you have young people who are there, make sure they get over to Santa Maria sopra Minerva, which is actually right by the Pantheon, which is another great church. Used to be a pagan temple, but is an incredibly beautiful and powerful church. It's the one that's circular with the hole in the roof. It's just awesome. And on Pentecost, you know what they do? I've never seen this. I have to get there for Pentecost. They actually, as a symbol of the coming down of the Holy Spirit, they drop tons of rose petals through the hole in the ceiling. And it is quite the sight to see when you're standing under that hole in that church in the ceiling, and the rose petals are floating down as a symbol of the Holy Spirit and Pentecost, the birth of the church. Anyhow, I digress. Get me started talking about Italy, and I go off into all kinds of directions. Well, obviously, number one in the hit parade of this Church Pop article, St. Peter's. You start by crossing the Holy Door, one of the most important traditions of the Jubilee, and receive a plenary indulgence. And there's so many different tombs you can visit in St. Peter's. Of course, Pope St. John Paul II. Now, when you walk into St. Peter's, if you've never been, the first thing you're going to see is this main aisle, which is just massive. And for me, what's very important is you look up immediately to the right, and this main aisle is lined with these statues of important saints. And St. Teresa of Avila, my gal, after whom I was named, my patron, and my favorite saint in the whole wide world, she's up there on the right. I'm like, you go, girl, right there. Anyhow, so behind St. Teresa of Avila, if you look to your right, is the Pietà. Amazing. Okay. Now, if you head over to see the Pietà, and then after you're done with the Pietà, you start heading toward the main altar, the Baldacchino, you will see on the side the tomb of St. John Paul II. And it's amazing. There's a little chapel there where you can pray, and he's buried on the main level of the church. Now, below, in what they kind of consider the catacombs of St. Peter's, where there are other tombs and where Mass is almost always held with groups down there in several different chapels, is the tomb of Pope Benedict. Oh, amazing. Not to mention so many other saints and so many other popes that are buried in St. Peter's. But there is a beautiful Eucharistic chapel that's open for adoration, which is right next to the tomb of John Paul II. Excuse me, but again, St. Peter's is number one on the hit parade because it's so important in the life of the church. And then, of course, the four holy doors. Now, anybody going for the Jubilee this year through, of course, Epiphany. If you're going there, you have the opportunity, in addition to St. Peter's, to go to St. John Lateran, which is the Cathedral of Rome, and it's the oldest church in the Western world. St. Paul outside the walls houses the remains of St. Paul and displays the portraits of all the popes. It is so amazing when you walk in and you look up to the right and you can see it's all these images of the popes from the beginning of time, beginning of the time of the church. Beautiful Santa Maria Maggiore, which is actually known as a Bethlehem of the West because of the relics of the Nativity. And it's known for its gold and also in terms of the way it's designed and the mosaics that come from the 5th century. Now, something very close to St. John Lateran that a lot of people miss, and I'm so glad that Church Pop did this, the Holy Stairs, Scala Sancta. The famous Holy Stairs, according to tradition, Jesus climbed during his Passion, brought to Rome by St. Helena. Now, thousands of pilgrims ascend the stairs on their knees, praying for their intentions. At the top is the Sancta Sanctorum, one of the oldest and most venerated chapels in Rome. It's really, really quite beautiful and moving. Now, another thing that you can do, which is beautiful, is to visit the tomb of Pope Francis. Now, he was buried and chose to be buried at St. Mary Major. Now, the reason he decided to do this was because he loved the icon of the Blessed Mother. The English name of that icon is the protector of the Roman people. And he would go and pray before that icon every time he was leaving for an event out of town and returning. And sometimes he would just go there and just pray. So that's a really special thing to do. Now, this does not mention... Oh, yeah, it does. Okay, great. You can venerate the incorrupt body of future Saint Pier Giorgio Frassati because, as I mentioned, it was transferred from St. John the Baptist in Turin to the Church of Santa Maria sopra Minerva, which is right near the Pantheon. So if you're going to Rome, and if you're going to be there this week, you can actually go see his body, okay? Now, when you go to the Pantheon, look at the Pantheon, and then go to the left if you're in front of the Pantheon, and then you go behind it a little bit to the left, and you'll see this large monument that indicates you're right in front of Santa Maria sopra Minerva, okay? Beautiful church, very important church. It's near the Pantheon, and the young Italian who died 100 years ago, again, he'll be canonized on September 7th by Pope Leo along with Carlo Acutis. Now, an idea for you, if you can get outside of Rome, go to Assisi and visit the tomb of Blessed Carlo Acutis, known as the influencer of God. He's in St. Mary Major in Assisi, just a 10-minute walk from the Basilica of St. Francis and even closer to the Basilica of Santa Chiara. Blessed Pier Giorgio Frassati and Carlo Acutis and all you holy men and women, pray for us. We'll be right back. Welcome back. Hope you're having a great Tuesday, July 29th. I love Tuesdays because we have Kelly Salomon with us, and we do Newman Guide News. Of course, she's with the wonderful Cardinal Newman Society. Hot off the presses, the Cardinal Newman magazine. Okay, so tell us about it, Kelly. It's coming out. Is it out already?
It's out already, Teresa. It's called Our Catholic Mission. It's the Cardinal Newman Society. It's our quarterly magazine that goes out to Catholic educators all over the country for free. Catholic educators and families, if you're listening, you can sign up for free on our website to receive this resource. We send it out to principals and superintendents and bishops and Catholic families across the country to remind what Catholic education is all about. And this issue is on building the Newman Guide pipeline. It really looks at Catholic education as a lifelong endeavor, not something that should just be divided up of, okay, you finished elementary school, check. You finished high school, check. You finished college, check. You got that degree. You can be done with Catholic education. No, Catholic education, as we see it, is this lifelong pursuit of journeying towards God, and when you see it like that, you really can unite all of Catholic education under this umbrella of, leading students to God and their truly integral formation.
Now, in terms of stories, how do you go about deciding what you're going to cover for the magazine?
A lot of it, Teresa, is decided based on what we see going on in Catholic education, as we talk about every week, as we see these issues from the increase in state vouchers going towards Catholic education, the drag shows happening on campuses, the commencement scandals, Catholic colleges closing and merging, et cetera. All these trends, in this issue, we talked about the demographic cliff that is approaching and how there are fewer college-age students than in a long time, and how this is going to be the new reality. And so what does that mean for Catholic schools and colleges? I think that means that they really need to be clear about who they are and what they stand for, that they offer a faithful Catholic education, and so that makes them different than any other public institution, and that's kind of the value of going to a place like this. And so that's how we kind of choose these different stories, and we feature some great people and leaders who are doing great work in Catholic education.
That's what I was going to say, because you do have, it's not just about how, because things can be very bad and really have gone downhill at some of these so-called Catholic universities, but you really do a good job of keeping us upbeat in terms of positive stories as well. And I imagine you have some of those in the latest issue, right?
Absolutely. One that comes to mind, it's near the end of this issue, is from a youth minister at a parish in Maryland who brings his youth group to visit Newman Guide colleges, several of them every year. And he does that a part of his youth ministry work because he sees their college choice playing out significantly in the future of their lives as they come back to his parish over the years, depending on where they went to college, of where they are in their faith life now. And he's seen great fruits from students who've gone off to Newman Guide colleges and have come back. So we feature a great story from Rich Olan, who's a youth minister in Maryland. And he even gives some good tips of, when you're making campus visits, what to do. Poke your head into a daily mass on a Tuesday and see how many students are in there. Go to one of the adoration chapels on campus. Sit in on classes. And look around the campus and really notice what the students are doing together. Are they engaging in conversation together? Are they playing games together? Are they putting away their phones and actually spending time together?
How do people get the magazine? We should have started out with that in terms of where do they find it online?
Yes, go to cardinalnewmansociety.org. In our section for educators, you'll see Our Catholic Mission magazine. All of our past editions live there, and you can sign up to get the free print copy as well, or receive the digital copy. And it's just a great quarterly resource about the latest in Catholic education and what Catholic education is all about.
All right, some of the other stories that you want to highlight today.
Sure. So let's see. Another great story is Dan Guernsey. He's a senior fellow here at the Cardinal Newman Society. He also directs Ave Maria University's Master in Catholic Educational Leadership. And he reflects on Newman's idea of education and how it is broader and bigger than just one specific grade level. And he talks about his own 6 kids who attended a Newman Guide school. And I have to read you this quote, Teresa. I think it's really great. He says, preparation in Newman Guide school made their choice of a Newman Guide college all the more exciting for them. Having been exposed to the best humanity had written, thought, and discovered when they were in their teens, they knew there was much more to learn or to learn more deeply. Their horizon had been set, and they were hungry to journey on their own for more, not subject to the siren song and shallowness that passes for much of higher education today with its glitter, ideologies, disintegrations, and distractions.
Wow.
So he had his 6 kids attended Newman Guide school. 5 of them went on to Newman Guide colleges, and the one who didn't, he said he did not have the same quality of college life and relationships as his Newman Guide siblings did.
Yeah, I love these stories because this is what you can't argue with testimonies, right? And these are the testimonies of people who have been through this and what they benefit and what it means to them.
Absolutely. The stories that's what I love sharing, is the stories. That's actually what I did. I wrote one piece in this magazine where I interviewed a Newman Guide School principal who's been at Everest Collegiate High School and Academy for 29 years. He's really devoted his life to serving at this school. And it's a pre-K to 12th grade school. And over the last several years, he's realized that he's invested more time in forming relationships with Newman Guide colleges because he doesn't want to see the formation and the formation end there for the students who've experienced Everest. He wants them to continue that Catholic formation for their whole lives. And so he's made deeper relationships with Newman Guide colleges. He's created a dual enrollment program with Franciscan University. He also has ties to Ave Maria University because, as you know, it started originally in Michigan, where Everest is located.
Yeah, I've spoken there before. I was going to say I've spoken at Everest Academy. I'm very familiar with it. Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yep.
Awesome.
Mm-hmm.
So, they had about, 8% of their graduates attending Newman Guide colleges 5 years ago, and this year they had 40% of them going on to Newman Guide colleges. And so I just love seeing these educators like this who are so dedicated to providing students with the very best education they can find for their whole lives and making them aware of these great opportunities. And Greg Reichert at Everest is a great example of this.
All right, so what is on, so just so people know when they go to the website, because I'm looking at the website right now, which is cardinalnewmansociety.org, and you go to For Educators, and you go to Our Catholic Mission. And so it comes up, just to make sure that I have the correct one. It's the latest one up there, right? The summer of 2025.
This is the summer 2025 edition, and building the Newman Guide pipeline, looking at education as a lifelong Catholic endeavor. And, we have so many great past editions on there as well. What does athletics look like in a Catholic school or college? What does admissions look like in a Catholic school or college? Great different themes that we've done on past Our Catholic Mission magazines.
Well, I have to tell you, I love the cover with the little girl with the uniform on because it reminds me of me from Catholic grade school and my uniform.
Isn't that great?
So cute.
She's so happy
adorable.
and joyful. Yeah. And yes.
Yep. We'll dive more deeply into this beautiful publication, Our Catholic Mission, from our friends at the Cardinal Newman Society. It is Newman Guide News on a Tuesday with our friend Kelly Salomon. Again, check it out, cardinalnewmansociety.org, and just go to For Educators and hit the link, Our Catholic Mission. Building the Newman Guide pipeline. I like that article, too. We can talk about that when we come back. Almost 40 minutes past the hour. We're glad you're tuned in to Catholic Connection, second hour here on a Tuesday, July 29th. Kelly Salomon, our regular guest on Tuesdays. Appreciate her great work. She's VP of Newman Guide Programs at the Cardinal Newman Society. Check out their great work, cardinalnewmansociety.org. And what a beautiful magazine. And I was telling you, the picture on the front just made me feel so, happy to have gone through 8 years of Catholic education. The little girl with the uniform. So cute.
Yes.
I love that.
Absolutely. So happy. Great smile.
Yeah.
Yep.
And
and Teresa, you're a great testament to the fact that your Catholic education never ends, right?
I should write I was thinking I should write a story for you guys.
You should. Tell us about your experience in your Catholic schools and how you've, continued your Catholic education your whole life, and how you share that with all of your listeners.
Because my husband and I were talking about that the other day after we were doing the readings. We were sitting outside on our patio, and my husband went to a Catholic high school in northeastern Pennsylvania, but not a grade school. Okay. And we were talking, I don't know, there was something very profound. This is part of my testimony that happened to me when I was in Catholic school. And I believe, Kelly, that in addition to my parents, it was the fact that the school, which is still our parish today, St. Joan of Arc in the Archdiocese of Detroit, because we had very good lay and religious teachers, that they put on my heart the importance of the Eucharist. And this is just a funny story I'm going to share, but this is the kind of impact that you guys talk about. And this is what you carry with you. As a child, I always, and if you see pictures of me, I love my bling. Okay. I mean, people, I'm a girly girl and I like my bling and I don't hide it. I mean, not that I'm out there wearing huge, things or anything, but I like to look nice. I like to accessorize, as they say. And so I don't know if you remember if you had this when you were growing up and you made your Holy Communion, but at the schools that time, they would bring in different religious products. So they would set up a shop, right, for the people who are making the first families who had first communicants. And so they would put out the pretty little mother of pearl prayer books and the lacy gloves and the white, rosaries and all these pretty things. And so one would think that I would be attracted to that. But when we went into this store, and it was after we were preparing for the Mass and the teachers were telling us what we had to do and everything, they opened up the store. And so my mom said, okay, you can pick out one of the items as your gift. And so she assumed I was going to go for the bling, right? I made a beeline for a statue of Jesus as he looked like a teenager. I still have the statue. And it's on the bottom of it, it said Panis Angelicus. And I still have that statue today.
Wow.
Now think about that. I mean, it may not sound like a big deal, but if you knew me even then with the bling, then you would think, wow, why did she do that as opposed to, going for something more blinging as a child? But anyway, that's the kind of impact that the teachers can have on you if you're taught well, right?
It is. And these very formative experiences, they stick with us our whole life and form our Catholic imagination. That actually, Teresa, reminds me of this story of I think a second or third grade student at our local Catholic school, and they were learning about the structure of beautiful cathedrals and what all the different names of the parts of a cathedral are and the history of cathedrals and where they're built. And this student, it's a great picture, I think, of what a real Catholic education looks like, because this student had served at daily Mass that day and then was learning about these cathedrals and their architecture in class, and he told his principal, he said, if I could altar serve in a beautiful cathedral like that every day for the rest of my life, I would be so happy.
Aww.
And, that's the kind of moments and formation that can happen in authentic Catholic school, because you're providing that holistic education that's providing for, the whole child. That's what we're really aiming for here at the Cardinal Newman Society.
Yeah, what you're doing is you're helping the students appreciate the fact that the Catholic faith teaches us who we are as a human person, because the body is important, the incarnational person, right? Because of Jesus.
Right.
Incredible. All right, let's take a look at your story, which I love. Newman Guide, Pipeline from School to College. This is a really well-researched piece, Kelly, and it's so important that if you are going to, as we were just discussing, form your kids well, it seems to me it will be a natural pipeline to a good Catholic college,
that,
right?
That we're helping families seek out what is good Catholic education, what does it look like, and then families, let's find any way to keep that Catholic formation going for the whole of that student's life, right? And I think there's becoming a bigger and bigger distinction between the Catholic schools and colleges that are doing it well and every other type of education. And I think that advantage is going to be even more important as we see this demographic cliff. And so that refers to the projected drop in the number of traditional college-age students in the United States beginning this fall due to fewer marriages and lower birth rates. And so with this challenge, I think comes an opportunity for Newman Guide colleges to really be clear and bold in who they are. I mean, I know Franciscan University told me, despite Franciscan's strong enrollment performance in recent years, this is not a moment for complacency. It's a time for clarity, conviction, and bold action rooted in our Catholic identity. That's what matters to families from Newman Guide schools. Another Newman Guide College, University of Mary, told me, while the demographic cliff presents significant challenges, the University of Mary remains steadfast and confident in our enduring strength as our distinctly Catholic and Benedictine mission. Our commitment to forming the whole person for the whole of life resonates with families seeking more than just a degree, those desiring a purposeful, faith-filled, values-driven education. Right. I think that point about, are you just going and getting the degree, or is this, do we see it as a whole formation of the person? That's going to make a big impact on where you choose to go.
Yeah, because it's one thing to get your degree. Okay, you have it, but to be formed is what is going to stay with you more than any type of, let's say, a formal education. You know what I mean? Because that's the whole person that we're talking about.
Right. The way you live, the way you think, the way you
work,
design
right?
your day. Exactly. Yes.
Do you think parents are becoming more aware of this and the importance of a true Catholic education, Kelly?
I think they are. As more people are questioning why go off to college at all, right? And I think that every family needs to decide for each child where is going to be the best fit for them. But if you're going to make that investment in college, Do you want them being formed by professors who are leading them astray, by leaving them on a campus that, is really hostile to Catholic beliefs and our kind of understanding of the person, right? Or do you want to seek out a really amazing opportunity that forms them in virtue and wisdom, and they become a better, a more holy person at the end of the 4 years?
Yeah. And you don't want your college education to be a constant battle. I mean, you have to stand up for your faith, but that can be very draining and very, it takes away from that college experience. We were talking about 2 weeks in a row about that amazing young woman who went to Loyola, and she was a convert, and she was so excited about going to a Catholic college, and she ended up just doing nothing but apologetics the whole time, trying to teach the staff at this college what true Catholicism is. Now, in her case, she was extremely strong, and she was a convert, and I think converts make some of the best Catholics because they study their way into the faith, and they really struggle with things, and what about this, and what about that? So she, I think, was in the right place at the right time to make a difference, I think, with others there and herself. And she ended up graduating and now becoming a Catholic Answers apologist. But not everyone is going to be able to react that strongly and that well, nor should they have to be worried about that when they go to so-called Catholic college, right?
Absolutely. She's definitely an exception to the rule. She's an amazing example and role model. But even as we shared in some of these other stories in this magazine, some of the students who went to other colleges, they survived, right? They some of them were able to survive and keep their faith, but we want them to go off and thrive,
right,
and grow.
Yeah, because it's not just a matter of surviving. I mean, it sounds like you've been through war if you survive, right? I mean, in some way, it's spiritual war, spiritual warfare. We want them to thrive. Okay, let's move. We only have about 3 minutes left. Briefly talk about this beautiful story, A Family's Journey with the Newman Guide.
Yes, this is written by Elisa Del Curto. She's a mother of 10 in California, and she found the Newman Guide by another friend recommending the Newman Guide. And she says, personally, I could not be happier with the results of our children's college educations. They have a deep and clear understanding of their Catholic faith and have made it their own. Most of the colleges on the Newman list have a required core of classes. In addition to the respective major courses, our kids were exposed to great literature, philosophy, and theology. This has prepared them for life. It is not enough to be successful at their chosen profession if they do not know how to live a Christian life. It has been a blessing for our children to learn in environments that do not attack Christianity, but bolster the one true church that Christ established.
She even talks about how she found out about the Cardinal Newman Society, right?
Yes, she does. I'm
looking at it right here. It says, a dear woman told me about the Cardinal Newman Society in a book they had recently published that listed authentically Catholic colleges and universities. Immediately, I ordered and received a paperback book that listed all the authentically Catholic colleges and universities that existed in the U.S. My prayer had been answered. Soon we began seeing some of these colleges before being profiled in the National Catholic Register. We were thrilled to learn that each school offered, and they were true to church teaching. So this is great, the fact that she learned it from somebody else. So we want people to pass this on.
Exactly, that we rely on Catholic families to get the word out about what Catholic education is all about, what the Newman Guide is. And I'm happy we'll be bringing back the print version of the Newman Guide this fall, so we can look for that later this fall. Families have used the online Newman Guide for the last couple of years, and we'll obviously continue making that available to thousands of Catholic families. But we'll have the print version, too, for those who prefer the imprint.
Yeah, I'm old school. I like the hard copy.
You like
I like
hard
to have
copy.
it in my
You'll
hands.
be the first to get it, Teresa.
Okay. I'll be looking for it. And there's another great story. I don't have time to dive into it, but again, we'll give people a link. Even graduate education should be faithfully Catholic. There's a concept for you, right?
It is. It is. A lot of families think, well, I'm getting this specialized degree, so it doesn't really matter. Well, when you place these concepts and these subjects in the whole understanding of the world, right, having faithful Catholic professors teach them and orient it within that Catholic worldview is so important. So we list even some of the questions we ask graduate programs that are applying for the Newman Guide about their president and their faculty, and how do they model the Catholic faith and how is it incorporated in their subjects. And it's very beautiful seeing graduate programs like Divine Mercy University that we recommend in the Newman Guide incorporating that Catholic worldview into their classes.
Now, because let's say you go through 4 years, you have a really good Catholic education, Then you get to a graduate program, and then they try to tear that all down. It's like, it's so frustrating for that to happen after everything that they just learned and lived and breathed in terms of Catholicism.
Right. And how much better can you be a counselor or work in education or all these different areas if you have a faithfully Catholic graduate degree that's going to propel you forward in that?
So how do people sign up for Our Catholic Mission, and also how do they sign up for the hard copy before we let you go today, Kelly?
Yes, go to cardinalnewmansociety.org, go to our section for educators, and you'll see Our Catholic Mission magazine. You can sign up to get on our mailing list for Our Catholic Mission, and feel free to sign up for our emails as well, too.
I just think you do such a good job with this, and the articles that you've done are really well researched too. And so kudos to you for this. But I love the cover, and I'm just so happy to see that more and more families are learning about the Cardinal Newman Society. Again, the website for all the information is cardinalnewmansociety.org. And then, as Kelly said, go to For Educators, and you'll see the list of the Our Catholic Mission publications. You can get a copy of it yourself. You can download it, and you can also write them for the hard copy as well. And again, as this one mom did, as we see in one of the articles, tell somebody about it. Think about the fallout from that, Kelly, that just one little drop in the water, and how it just has a ripple effect, right? In terms of her family telling another family, and now her family who went through the school is benefiting, and they're spreading the Catholic faith. Have a great weekend, my dear. Kelly Salomon with us from the Cardinal Newman Society every Tuesday for Newman Guide News. We'll be right back. Thank you so much for tuning into Catholic Connection on a Tuesday, July 29th. You don't want to miss tomorrow's show either. We don't want to miss any show, but coming up tomorrow, you're not going to believe this. We have Sister Deirdre Burns going to be joining us in this hour of the program. You know her. She really doesn't need an introduction, but she is an amazing religious sister, but also a doctor. She's a defender of life, and gosh, I'm so excited to talk to her. I've interviewed her before, but she's fabulous. And what a warrior, what a beautiful, wonderful warrior. She'll be joining us. And, of course, Joan Lewis in the first hour, taking a look at some amazing art that is being done in honor of the canonization of Carlo Acutis. We'll discuss. And then, of course, Italy's Shrines and Wonders. And we're going to talk more about, we mentioned World Youth Day, or the, not World Youth Day, but the Jubilee of Youth. I want to talk about the month of August, because in August is Ferragosto. It originally came about from Caesar Augustus, hence the name Augusto, right? That he decided that his people, especially the farmers, needed a rest. But then it developed into a month-long holiday, which it now is in Italy. But I'm tying it in with something my pastor has been, on something he's been teaching for the last couple of weeks. He's doing a series on slowing down. And I have his column that he wrote for the weekend that I want to share with you, because it ties into his time in Italy when he was studying there, and how he misses what the Italians do, especially the fact that the Italians work to live. But we do it the other way around. We live to work. We should be more Italian. We'll explain tomorrow. Have a great Tuesday. A domani. Ciao, ciao.